Launching the discussion is a really important part of facilitating a good discussion. Helping people feel comfortable, opening up, tapping into a felt need, and giving focus for the evening is really helpful. And there are 4 kinds of effective launches for discussions. As noted in the previous training, sometimes you can just ask people to summarize what stood out to them with an open question. This is called a survey launch because you are surveying the interests and motivations of the group. The survey launch can work well, but sometimes people won't fully engage this kind of a launch because they either haven't read the text, or they read it too long ago to remember, or if you were listening to a video, they might have been daydreaming and thinking about the day, so they didn't fully hear everything. In that context, if you ask an open question about what they thought, you might be greeted with silence and discomfort because they feel like it's a test that they're failing. Therefore, you often need to anticipate the most motivating point in the teaching for the night and help the group focus on it through what's called a content launch. Content launches begin with a concise summary of the felt need and main truth addressed in the text. You summarize that by answering this 2-part question. What does the text ask us to change, and why? See, by doing this, even those who didn't prepare or listen well, they can meaningfully engage. See, often content launches are easier with some texts than others. I mean, most well-written books have a story or a key theme they develop for each chapter. Your job in a content launch would be to concisely summarize that theme and emotion in a few sentences with an invitation for the group to react to the idea the author presented. For studies of biblical books, you can often get great summaries from commentaries written by people like N.T. Wright's For Everyone New Testament series commentaries. It's written in a way that's accessible for everyone. Sometimes the biblical text is obvious in what it is getting at. So for example, for a text like Romans 7, a content launch might simply be, so the Apostle Paul, this great leader of the Christian church, vulnerably admits he often doesn't do what he wants to do. He sins. So much so that he frustratingly asks, who then can save us? I mean, he powerfully admits he can't do it himself. Are there some areas of your life where you can relate to those feelings of Paul? Content launches don't require long summaries. Just grab the main point, hit the emotion, and ask an open question for people to share more than a yes or no answer. A 3rd kind of launch is the dilemma launch. Often topics around honesty and authenticity lead to creating a dilemma. How honest should we be in this particular situation? How do you reconcile the need to be authentic and real with trusting how people will deal with what you say? See, in the text, if the text includes a dilemma, you can just borrow that and ask the question. Often you will discern the dilemma by how the text challenges you to action and how that action is uncomfortable. For example, 1 Corinthians 8, Paul instructs us to defer from doing things, even things that are really okay, that might offend a weaker brother. But how do we know when to challenge a brother being controlled by fear of sin that is not sin at all? And how do we know when we choose to not say something and not do something and defer? Ask a question that gets at the competing desires that make that challenge or biblical command uncomfortable. Or another example that would be a possibility for a discussion on faithfulness or forgiveness in marriage, a question that forces people to wrestle with a difficult decision, a dilemma launch. Let's say your best friend came to you and said he or she was having an affair and their spouse, also your close friend, didn't know. What do you do? The dilemma launch is hard to pull off and can, like the example I just gave, be way too intense and elicit too much emotion, creating unnecessary conflict and sidetrack everyday life applications. Or the other difficulty in pulling off a dilemma launch is, what if everyone in the group thinks the same way? There really isn't a dilemma, and you're going to get a lot of pat answers that all agree. So you want to be fairly sure everyone won't agree before you use a dilemma launch, and that the emotion and conflict elicited by the dilemma won't be too high. So use dilemma launches sparingly. When they work, they are great fun. The 4th kind of launch is the personal history launch. This is getting someone to share something from their background, likes, dislikes, or a personal experience that leads into the discussion topics. So in leading into a discussion topic on prayer, you might ask, share with us the 30-second version of the story about this question. Tell me about a time when you prayed and a coincidence happened where God answered or might have answered the prayer. See, in personal history launches, look for parallel or similar experiences as those in the text and invite people to share personally in some way related to the topic to kick it off. This is a kind of, in a sense, almost icebreaker type of a launch to a discussion. I also want to encourage you to look at launches and discussions like one would look at batting percentages in slow-pitch softball. You aren't going to get a hit 100% of the time. If the relationships in the group are growing and strong, the launches become less critical to a great discussion, because even if a launch bombs, the desire to talk about the text and apply will still be there. However, good launches add to the interest and help discussion. But if you get 3 to 5 out of 10 launches that work fantastic and several others that work okay, that's great. Remember, the goal is not the launch. The goal is the discussion and the relationships that result. So even if you do a launch that bombs, don't worry about it. In fact, if it bombs badly, laugh and make fun of it. It adds to the authenticity and fun of the group. So take a moment to consider this question, and if you're with others, talk about it. What have been some of the best starts to discussions you can recall?